Welcome, my beloved friends. Welcome back to the enchanting world of storytelling with soul stories. Today, we gather once more in this mystical space of narrative magic. Before we begin, let me embrace each and every one of you with the warmth of love and gratitude. Your presence, your beautiful souls, always ready to embark on a new journey of love, fills my heart with indescribable joy. My dears, today, I wish not only to share with you a story, but also a precious lesson, one that touches the deepest essence of life. Life is precious and fleeting, like morning dew upon rose petals. Remember, this world is ever-changing. People may come and go, and nothing lasts forever. That thought may bring sadness, but in truth, it is a beautiful reminder that we must cherish every moment. Love with all your heart while you still can. Embrace every second, whether of joy or sorrow, for it is in those very moments that we are truly alive. Today's story is a testament to this truth. This is a tale of two souls who learned that time may separate bodies, but it can never divide hearts that are meant to be one. After 10 years apart, they discovered that true love never fades. It simply waits for the right time to find its way back. Like a diamond, formed under pressure, only becoming more brilliant. The overwhelming love and response you have given to my previous stories are the most precious gifts to me. Each comment, a warm embrace. Each word of appreciation, a gentle kiss upon my heart. You are the reason I continue to share these tales of love, hope, and eternal bonds. Are your hearts ready to embark on this magical journey? A love so pure, so powerful, that even 10 years of separation could not diminish its radiant glow. Always remember, my beloved readers, you are precious, you are loved, and you are deeply cherished. With all my love and endless blessings, I remain your storyteller and your forever friend. Today, hold your loved ones close. Share a smile, offer a kind word, give a warm hug, for it is in these simple moments that life's true beauty is found. Let this story serve as a reminder. True love is never bound by time or space. And so, the love story begins. The airplane touched down at John F. Kennedy International Airport, the dazzling lights of New York City stretching far below. Seated by the window, Amelia Carter gazed down at the bustling streets she once belonged to a decade ago. 10 years, a span long enough for a person to change, for a life to take a different course, but perhaps not long enough to erase memories. The flight attendant's announcement about the plane's safe landing jolted Amelia out of her thoughts. She took a deep breath, gathered her bag, and stood up. There was no one waiting for her at the airport, no warm embrace welcoming her home. She had long grown accustomed to that. Pulling her suitcase behind her, she swiftly moved past the bustling crowd. Families reuniting, friends embracing, lovers holding each other tight. But there was no one there for her, only herself and New York. She got into a taxi and gave the driver the address of her hotel. She planned to rent an apartment once she settled into work, but for now, a hotel near the hospital would be more convenient. As the taxi merged into the dense traffic, neon lights reflected off the windows. She watched familiar streets pass by, Times Square ablaze with brightness, Central Park standing serene amidst the city's rush, restaurants and cafes that once held memories of her and Ethan. She quickly turned her face away, as if that could banish the past. When the car stopped in front of the Langham, New York, a luxurious hotel near Manhattan, she stepped out, inhaling the crisp autumn night air. New York was still bustling, loud, relentless, unchanged. She pulled her suitcase through the hotel lobby, refusing to let emotions take hold. She had no time to dwell on the past. Tomorrow, she would officially step into her role as the head of cardiology at New York Presbyterian Hospital, an opportunity no one could turn down. That was why she was here. Not for anyone, not for any memory, only for her career. The next morning, Amelia woke early, meticulously preparing for her first day at the hospital. She chose a navy blue suit, elegant and professional, her long brown hair neatly tied into a bun. Stepping into the hospital, She immediately sensed the urgency and energy of one of the country's top medical institutions. She met with the hospital director, attended her first meeting with the medical board. Everything went smoothly. But then, as the hospital secretary handed her a packet of onboarding documents, Amelia raised an eyebrow at a particular requirement. All new medical personnel must undergo a comprehensive health examination. She considered objecting. A top cardiologist like her certainly didn't need this. But it was protocol. It's just a routine checkup, she reassured herself. With years of experience in the field, she understood this was merely a formality, a simple step, but she had no idea that a fateful encounter awaited her in that examination room. Just before she entered, Dr. Lisa Donovan, one of the hospital's department heads, gave her a light pat on the shoulder. "Congratulations, Dr. Carter. We're all thrilled to have you on board." Amelia offered a polite smile. "Thank you, I'm looking forward to working with everyone." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "By the way, I saw your medical checkup schedule. Your attending physician is Ethan Brooks." The name hit Amelia like a shockwave. "What did you say?" Her voice faltered slightly. Lisa frowned. "Dr. Ethan Brooks, head of neurosurgery. Do you two know each other?" For a few seconds, Amelia couldn't breathe. "Ethan here?" She had never thought she'd see him again. Never thought he was still in New York, let alone at the same hospital. Her mind went completely blank. Lisa shrugged at Amelia's reaction. "He's one of the best surgeons we have. A genius in his field. But I've heard he had quite a heartbreaking love story years ago." That sentence made Amelia freeze. Lisa gave her another pat. "Come on, you're running late. Relax, it's just a checkup." "Just a checkup?" "No." Amelia knew all too well. This was a confrontation she could no longer avoid. A reckoning with the past she had spent the last 10 years trying to bury. Amelia walked down the hallway of New York Presbyterian Hospital, the soft click of her heels echoing against the marble floor. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it reverberating in her chest. She had faced countless critical cases, performed surgeries so delicate that a single misstep could mean the difference between life and death. Yet at this moment, standing before the door labeled Dr. Ethan Brooks, neurosurgery, she felt as though she were stepping into the most dangerous territory she had ever encountered. Taking a deep breath, Amelia knocked. A deep, familiar voice, distant yet unmistakable, responded from within. "Come in." Just two simple words, but they carried the weight of a tidal wave of memories. She turned the handle and stepped inside, and in an instant, time seemed to freeze. Ethan sat behind his desk, clad in a crisp white coat, pen in hand, flipping through a patient's file. He had changed, but he was still Ethan. She recognized the sharp lines of his face. Still striking, still exuding an undeniable allure. But there was something colder now, something more distant. A shiver ran down her spine. Finally, he lifted his gaze. His blue eyes met hers. For a fleeting second, Amelia was pulled back into the past. Back to the years when they had been two young, ambitious medical students, loving each other recklessly, against all odds. But then, the cold detachment in his stare snapped her back to the present. Ethan didn't blink, didn't react, just looked at her. And then, as if she had never existed, he lowered his gaze and resumed reading the file. "Dr. Carter, have a seat." Dr. Carter, not Amelia, not Em. Her throat tightened, but she refused to let him see it. Steeling herself, Amelia walked forward, pulled out a chair, and sat down, keeping her voice even. "I didn't think we'd meet again like this." Ethan let out a dry chuckle, devoid of warmth. "Neither did I." He flipped another page. "You've changed." Amelia clenched her hands in her lap. "And you haven't changed at all." For a brief second, he paused. But then, as if unwilling to indulge in personal conversation, he cut straight to the point. "This health screening is just a formality. I'll make it quick, cold, distant, professionally ruthless." But Amelia was no longer the fragile girl from the past. She nodded, determined to keep her composure. "Do whatever you need to do." Ethan stood, slipping his stethoscope around his neck. "I'll check your blood pressure first." Silently, Amelia rolled up her sleeve, exposing her slender wrist. Ethan said nothing as he wrapped the cuff around her arm. When his fingers brushed against her skin, a jolt of electricity shot down her spine. She had no idea if Ethan felt it too. But when she looked up, she saw his hand still for just a fraction of a second. Just a second. Then he regained his professional demeanor. "Your blood pressure is slightly elevated," he noted, voice neutral. Amelia smirked, grasping for a sliver of confidence. "Ever heard of white coat syndrome?" Ethan glanced at her. "You're a doctor. You don't have white coat syndrome." She chuckled softly. "Not all doctors are the same." Ethan tightened the cuff just a little. "You're right. No one is the same. No one could ever replace anyone." But he didn't say that out loud. Instead, he fell silent, just as he had for the past 10 years. He moved on to listening to her heartbeat. Pressing the stethoscope against her chest, he listened. But Amelia knew. He could hear her heart racing. She tried to steady her breathing, but every time his fingers moved, her pulse seemed to quicken. Ethan slowly withdrew the stethoscope. His eyes darkened. "Your heart rate is higher than normal. Maybe I walked too fast to get here," she replied, though deep down, she knew it was a lie. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He simply watched her, as if trying to read every thought she wasn't saying. The space between them was filled with unsaid words, unasked questions, unspoken emotions. Finally, Ethan turned back to his desk, jotting something down. "All your vitals are fine. You've officially passed the health screening." Amelia stood. The examination was over, but the real battle had only just begun. "Thank you, Dr. Brooks." She deliberately emphasized the title. Ethan glanced up, his deep-set eyes lingering on her for a brief moment. "Welcome to New York Presbyterian." Cold, distant, as if the last 10 years had never happened. Amelia turned, walking out of the office, closing the door behind her. She had braced herself for this encounter, but she hadn't expected it to hurt this much. Taking a deep breath, she leaned against the door, tilting her head back against the wall, trying to steady her emotions. She had thought she could face her past, but perhaps she had been naive. Amelia stepped out of Ethan's office, but the past wouldn't let her leave so easily. The hallways of New York Presbyterian blurred before her eyes, dissolving into a flood of memories. 10 years ago, back when they were two young medical students, they had everything: love, dreams, and a future that seemed unbreakable. Back then, Ethan wasn't a distant, cold doctor. He was warm, patient, always looking at her with the gentlest of gazes. She remembered the nights they spent awake in the library, whispering about their dream of opening a clinic together to help those who couldn't afford medical care. She remembered the overnight shifts, when Ethan would secretly bring her a cup of hot coffee and place it in front of her with a smile. She remembered their first kiss, stolen in an empty hospital room, when they were both exhausted but couldn't bear to be apart for even a second. But those beautiful memories didn't last forever. One mistake had torn them apart, a misunderstanding that, even after all these years, Amelia still didn't have answers for. 10 years ago, Amelia had received an offer that every young doctor dreamed of: a research fellowship at Mayo Clinic, one of the most prestigious medical institutions in the country. It was an opportunity she couldn't refuse, a major step in her career, a ticket to change her life. She had thought Ethan would be happy for her, that they would find a way to make their relationship work despite the distance. But things didn't go as she had imagined. The day she received her acceptance letter, Amelia rushed to the hospital to tell Ethan the news. But before she could say a word, she saw him with someone else. A woman, his colleague, standing too close, whispering something in his ear. And then she reached up and touched his face in a way that was far too intimate for just co-workers. Amelia froze. She couldn't believe it. The man she loved had betrayed her. She turned and walked away without a word. And from that moment on, they never saw each other again until today. "Dr. Carter?" A voice behind her pulled Amelia from the whirlwind of memories. She turned to see Dr. Olivia Wright, the head of cardiology and the person who had personally invited her to join the hospital. "Are you all right?" Olivia asked, her gaze filled with concern. "You seem distracted." Amelia took a deep breath, forcing down the emotions threatening to surface. "I'm fine." She nodded, clenching her hands to steady herself. But Olivia wasn't so easily convinced. Her sharp eyes flicked toward Ethan's office door before returning to Amelia, now filled with quiet curiosity. "You know Dr. Brooks?" Amelia pressed her lips together. She didn't want to lie, but she also couldn't tell the truth. "I used to." Olivia studied her for a moment, as if weighing her next words. Then she gave a small, knowing smile. "Be careful with him. Ethan Brooks is a brilliant surgeon, but he's also complicated." Amelia frowned. "What do you mean?" Olivia only offered a cryptic smile. "That's all I'll say. But if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to come to me." With a reassuring pat on Amelia's shoulder, Olivia walked away, leaving her with 100 more questions than before. Amelia turned back to look at the closed door behind her. There was too much she didn't understand. Why was Ethan acting like their past had never happened? Why did Olivia warn her about him? And most importantly, why did it still hurt to look into his eyes after all these years? What Amelia didn't know was that, just on the other side of that door, Ethan stood frozen, gripping his pen so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He had heard her conversation with Olivia. He knew she was still hurting from the past. But there was one truth Amelia had never known. That day, she saw him with another woman. She had misunderstood everything. Ethan had never betrayed her. That woman was his sister, someone Amelia had never met. She had come to tell him that their mother had been diagnosed with cancer. That was why she had leaned in to whisper. That was why she had touched his face. But Amelia had never asked. She had only walked away, leaving him with nothing but unanswered questions and a pain that never faded. And now, after 10 years, they were face to face once again. But would a decade be enough to fix what was broken? Or would it only make the scars deeper than ever? She had planned to forget the encounter with Ethan, to push aside her emotions and treat him as nothing more than a regular colleague. But fate had other plans. The moment she returned to her office, an email from the hospital board appeared in her inbox. Subject: Special Collaboration Appointment. From Hospital Administration. Message: Dr. Carr, we have decided to appoint you to a special collaboration team between the cardiology department and the neurosurgery department. The lead physician for this team will be Dr. Ethan Brooks. The first meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. Best regards, New York Presbyterian Hospital Administration. Amelia stared at the screen. Ethan's name stood out like a cruel reminder of the past. How was she supposed to work alongside him every day, when even looking into his eyes brought her pain? But backing down wasn't an option. She had returned to New York as a doctor, not a fragile woman clinging to old wounds. If Ethan could act like nothing had ever happened, then so could she. So, Ethan and Amelia have reunited after 10 years apart. How will they continue to face each other? Take a moment to predict the next developments of the story in the comments below. We'll continue in just 5 seconds. The morning meeting carried an unspoken tension that only one person in the room could truly feel. To everyone else, it was just another routine project discussion. But for Amelia Carter, it was something far more unsettling, because the man standing across the conference table was none other than Ethan Hayes. She hadn't expected this. Not after their uncomfortable encounter in the exam room last week. Not when she was still trying to build an invisible wall between her past and present. But now, there was no escaping it. She had to work with him. As Amelia stepped into the conference room, her white coat clung neatly to her figure, a perfect reflection of the professionalism she worked so hard to maintain. Her heels clicked lightly against the tiled floor, yet each step felt heavier than usual. Scanning the room, she saw that Ethan was already there, standing beside the presentation board, exuding the same composed demeanor he always had. Just like before, he was still the same, poised, confident, with eyes so deep they held things she no longer wanted to decipher. Time hadn't changed him much. Or maybe Ethan had just become better at hiding. She pulled out a chair and sat at the opposite end of the table, keeping a professional distance. Not too far, but just enough to maintain the necessary boundaries. She could feel his gaze on her, but she refused to acknowledge it. The meeting truly began when Ethan spoke. "Thank you all for being here. His voice, deep and steady, filled the quiet space with absolute confidence. As mentioned in the briefing email, this project will focus on surgical cases that require both cardiac and neurological intervention. Our goal is to develop an optimal approach that minimizes risks for patients with complex conditions. Amelia gripped her pen tightly, her eyes fixed on the documents in front of her, pretending to absorb every word. But the truth was she was getting lost in his voice. And she hated it. Hated how it pulled her back to the past, to when she was just an eager medical intern, hanging on to every sharp, insightful analysis Ethan delivered. Back then, he had been the brightest mind in their class, always leading. And she, whether consciously or not, had always been chasing after him. But that was 10 years ago. Now, she was one of the top cardiologists at this hospital. And Ethan, no matter how brilliant, wasn't going to shake her anymore. Dr. Carter? His voice cut through her thoughts. She looked up, locking eyes with him. It was brief, but enough for both of them to sense the unspoken tension between them. Would you like to share your thoughts on the treatment strategy for our first group of patients? Amelia inhaled quietly, steadying herself. I've reviewed the data, she said, keeping her tone professional. I believe preoperative blood pressure management through medication will help reduce neurological complications during surgery. Ethan gave a small nod, his expression unreadable. That was my consideration as well. However, we need to refine the timing of this intervention. I'll let you expand on it in the next meeting. Amelia simply nodded. No further discussion was needed. But she knew. Ethan's silence was more unnerving than any argument they could have had, because it proved that, despite everything, they still understood each other too well. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The meeting dragged on for almost an hour. Yet for Amelia, it felt like a lifetime. Ethan continued to present, exchanging thoughts with the team, and she did her best to ignore his presence. But every time he spoke, every time his gaze brushed past her, memories threatened to creep back in. Late-night discussions, conversations in the library, promises that were never kept. When the meeting finally ended, Amelia gathered her documents swiftly, eager to leave. But before she could step through the door, Ethan spoke. Amelia! She froze. For the first time during the entire meeting, he had called her by her name, not Dr. Carter. Turning around, she met his gaze, steady, unreadable, but holding something beneath the surface. I know this isn't easy. His voice was lower now, meant only for the two of them. But we're professionals. I trust that personal matters won't interfere with our work. Amelia tightened her grip on the notebook in her hands. Personal matters? She let out a small, hollow laugh, one with no humor in it. Ethan, as far as I'm concerned, that ended a long time ago. I'm here to work with a colleague. Nothing more, nothing less. Ethan held her gaze for a second longer. Then he nodded once. Good. Saying nothing more, Amelia turned and walked out. But as the door clicked shut behind her, she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just another research project. It was a test to see if she had truly moved on from the past. And she wasn't sure if she would pass. A week after the project meeting, Amelia walked into the conference room at the neurosurgery department, where the next discussion was set to take place. She had meticulously prepared the data on the first group of patients for the trial. Though she still felt a flicker of unease about working with Ethan, she reminded herself that the job mattered more than the past. But as soon as she entered the room, it wasn't Ethan who caught her off guard. It was another woman standing beside him. She was younger than Amelia, with sleek chestnut brown hair and striking blue eyes. She stood close to Ethan, leaning casually against the desk, her expression lighting up every time he spoke. There was something too familiar about the way she interacted with him. Too comfortable, too effortless for just colleagues. Amelia, this is Dr. Olivia Spencer. Ethan's voice broke through the hum of conversation. His expression was calm, unreadable. Olivia is a neurosurgeon and has been my research partner on several projects. She'll be joining us for this study as well. Amelia nodded, concealing the inexplicable irritation rising in her chest. She extended her hand with a poised, professional smile. Pleasure to meet you, Dr. Spencer. Olivia smiled as she shook Amelia's hand, her grip firm. I've heard a lot about you, Dr. Carter. Ethan has spoken very highly of your expertise in cardiology. Amelia wasn't sure if she imagined it, but there was a distinct emphasis when Olivia said Ethan's name, as if she was trying to make a point. Ethan had talked about her? In what way? And more importantly, when? Is that so? Amelia responded lightly, masking the unease creeping into her chest. I look forward to working with you. She quickly excused herself from the exchange and took a seat near the presentation board. But even as she focused on the meeting, she couldn't ignore the subtle interactions between Ethan and Olivia. An unsettling presence. Throughout the meeting, Olivia didn't just establish herself as an exceptional surgeon. She also made it abundantly clear that she was comfortable around Ethan in a way that went beyond professionalism. She touched his arm lightly when she left. She leaned in closer whenever they discussed a complex surgical case. And, most notably, she looked at him with admiration, the kind of admiration that wasn't just about his skills. It was the gaze of a woman who wanted something more. The weight of an unspoken emotion. The meeting lasted for over an hour, and by the end of it, Amelia was more than ready to leave. She collected her notes quietly, determined not to let Olivia's presence bother her more than it should. But as she stepped into the hallway, she overheard a conversation that stopped her in her tracks. Ethan, are you free tonight? Olivia's voice floated from behind her. I just made a reservation at this great restaurant nearby. We could go over the research in a more relaxed setting. Amelia's grip tightened around her folder. I'd love to, but I have an emergency surgery scheduled, Ethan replied, his voice steady. Oh. Olivia sounded only mildly disappointed. What about tomorrow? I really think we should have some time alone to discuss the project. Without anyone else interrupting, Amelia didn't know if Olivia was unaware that she was still within earshot, or if she simply didn't care. She didn't stay to hear Ethan's answer. She didn't need to. She walked away quickly, refusing to acknowledge the tightness in her chest. It wasn't because she still had feelings for him. It was because Olivia was deliberately making a statement. Ethan's dilemma. From inside the room, Ethan watched Amelia's retreating figure. He had noticed the way she had stiffened when Olivia invited him to dinner. He had caught the flicker of something unreadable on her face before she quickly turned away. For a split second, a part of him wanted to go after her. To say something. To explain. To do something. But he didn't. Instead, he turned back to Olivia, keeping his tone even. I have surgery tomorrow as well. Olivia gave a small, amused smile. All right then, when are you free? And let's be honest, Ethan, I'm not just talking about work here. Ethan held her gaze. He had always known Olivia was interested in more than just being colleagues. She was an excellent neurosurgeon, one of the best he had worked with. But she had also made it clear, for years now, that she wanted more. And yet, Ethan had never once given her false hope. Because no matter how much time had passed, the only woman he had ever loved was Amelia Carter, whether she realized it or not. That afternoon, Johns Hopkins Medical Center. Amelia walked down the main hallway of Johns Hopkins Medical Center, gripping her stack of documents tightly after the tense meeting. Her mind was still clouded with lingering thoughts of Olivia and Ethan. She kept telling herself it wasn't her business, that she had no reason to care. But the unease in her chest hadn't faded completely. Suddenly, a deep, familiar voice called from behind her. Dr. Carter? Amelia turned around and was met with a familiar smile. Nathan Pierce. Nathan was one of the most prominent figures in medical technology. As the CEO of Pierce Biomedical, a company specializing in advanced surgical innovations, he was well known for his sharp intellect and undeniable charisma. With his keen brown eyes and effortless confidence, Nathan was the kind of man who could command attention in any room he walked into. Dressed in a sleek but slightly relaxed suit, his tie loosened just enough to suggest a man constantly on the move, Nathan exuded a balance of power and ease that made him stand out. Nathan, Amelia greeted him with a small, polite smile. I heard you recently joined a new research project with Dr. Hayes? Nathan asked, his expression filled with genuine curiosity. The mere mention of Ethan's name sent a dull ache through her chest. But Amelia inhaled discreetly, keeping her voice composed. That's right. It's been interesting. Nathan tilted his head slightly, his signature smile never fading. That's great. I have no doubt about your capabilities. But I do hope work isn't taking up all of your time. Because I have an invitation for you, if you don't mind." Amelia raised an eyebrow, mildly surprised. "An invitation?" Nathan's lips curved slightly, amusement flickering in his eyes. "I know a fantastic little restaurant in Georgetown. If you're free tomorrow evening, I'd love to take you out to dinner. Just a conversation between two people passionate about medicine and technology." Amelia let out a small breath, her lips twitching upward. She wasn't naive. She knew this wasn't just about work. Nathan had always been direct. He never hid his interest in her. And the most striking thing was, he was everything Ethan wasn't. Nathan was bold, while Ethan kept his distance. Nathan was open, while Ethan remained closed off and unreadable. Nathan didn't remind her of old wounds, of years lost to misunderstandings and unspoken words. For a moment, Amelia hesitated. Was she really ready to let someone else in? Or was she just looking for a distraction? "That sounds tempting," she replied with a small, unreadable smile. "I'll think about it." Nathan nodded, his gaze warm but piercing. "I'll be waiting for your answer." As he walked away, disappearing into the crowded hospital corridor, Amelia lingered for a moment, watching his retreating figure. Maybe it was time to give herself a new chance. Or maybe, just maybe, she was only trying to hide from the truth. That no matter what she did, no matter who she met, her heart still hadn't truly let go of the past. Nightfall, Johns Hopkins Medical Center. The neon lights reflected off the rain-slicked pavement, painting streaks of color across the dimly lit hospital grounds. Though it was late, the energy around Johns Hopkins Medical Center remained restless. Nurses and doctors on night shifts hurried past, their footsteps echoing against the cold tile floors. Amelia stepped out of the research wing, her mind weighed down by the day's events. The meeting with Ethan and Olivia had drained her more than she wanted to admit. She had told herself, repeatedly, that Ethan was her past, that what they had was long over. But seeing him every day, hearing his voice, witnessing Olivia's effortless laughter as she leaned into him, it made it impossible to truly move on. Amelia tightened her grip on her purse and walked briskly toward the parking lot, eager to leave this place behind for the night. But just as she descended the last step, she stopped. Not far from where she stood, beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, she saw them. Ethan and Olivia. Olivia said something, and a second later, Ethan laughed. It was a rare, unguarded laugh. A laugh Amelia knew too well. Her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure why she stood frozen, why she didn't just turn away. She wasn't supposed to care. She had no right to feel anything. Ethan wasn't hers anymore. She had been the one to leave 10 years ago. She couldn't blame him for moving on, for finding happiness with someone else. And yet, despite every logical thought telling her to look away, Amelia couldn't stop herself from noticing Olivia's gaze. The way her eyes shone whenever she looked at Ethan, the way she unconsciously leaned toward him. And worst of all, the way Ethan smiled back. A familiar pressure settled in Amelia's chest, heavy and unshakable. She forced herself to turn away, to take a step forward. But each step felt heavier than the last. She didn't want to feel this way. She didn't want to feel anything for Ethan anymore. But as she crossed the parking lot, something made her look up. And at that very moment, her eyes met Ethan's. A sharp gust of wind swept through the night, sending a chill down her spine. But Amelia wasn't sure if it was the cold or the way Ethan was looking at her. For a split second, she swore she saw something flicker in his gaze. Not indifference, not detachment, but hesitation, confusion, like he was asking himself why she was there. Like he was searching for something in her expression, an answer neither of them had. But none of it mattered, did it? He had moved on. She had seen it with her own eyes. The effortless way he interacted with Olivia, the smile that no longer belonged to her alone. So why? Why was there doubt in his eyes? And more importantly, why did he care what she was doing, who she was with? Later that night, Amelia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as the soft glow of her bedside lamp cast shadows across the room. Her mind was a storm of unanswered questions. She tried, desperately, to push the image of Ethan out of her thoughts. Try not to think about the way he had looked at her. But the moment kept replaying, looping endlessly in her mind like a film reel she couldn't turn off. Had she misread him? Was she just fooling herself into believing that there was still something there? Some lingering emotion? Some unspoken attachment? Or had Ethan truly moved on, and all she had witnessed was nothing more than a fleeting moment of surprise? She shut her eyes, willing herself to sleep. But her heartbeat refused to slow down. Outside, the endless night stretched across the city, the moon casting silver light over the quiet streets. But within Amelia's heart, a storm had already begun to brew. The unexpected collaboration on a joint project has stirred up confusing emotions for both Amelia and Ethan. Will they be able to have an open conversation and uncover the truth? How will they continue to face each other? Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next chapters. G5s. 6 a.m. Johns Hopkins Medical Center. The soft glow of early dawn filtered through the towering glass windows of the emergency wing as Amelia stepped into the hospital. She didn't need coffee to wake up this morning. The weight of the day ahead had already kept her awake all night. The moment she reached her office, her assistant, Julia, was already waiting, clutching a stack of files with a serious expression. "Dr. Carter, the department head wants to see you in the main conference room immediately," Julia said quickly. "There's a high-risk surgery that requires the best team available." Amelia frowned, but didn't question it. She simply nodded and strode toward the elevators. A high-stakes surgery. The main conference room on the 5th floor was reserved for critical discussions, where only the best surgeons were summoned. As Amelia entered, the room was already filled. The top cardiologists, neurosurgeons, anesthesiologists, and senior nurses all gathered. At the head of the table stood Dr. Harold Simmons, the head of the department, his sharp gaze scanning the room. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Dr. Simmons began, pressing a remote that projected a series of MRI scans onto the large screen. The moment Amelia saw the images, her breath caught. A brain tumor, a large mass, dangerously close to the vagus nerve, which controlled heart rate and blood pressure. "Our patient is Emily Lawson, a 17-year-old violin prodigy," Dr. Simmons continued. "The tumor is severely compressing the vagus nerve, causing extreme fluctuations in heart rhythm and blood pressure. It's now reached a critical stage. If we don't operate soon, she may suffer irreversible heart failure." A heavy silence settled over the room. Even without further explanation, everyone knew this was not a standard procedure. Removing the tumor required extreme precision. One wrong move could paralyze the nerve, permanently ending Emily's ability to play music. Worse, a miscalculation could cause instant cardiac arrest on the operating table. Dr. Simmons exhaled before delivering his final verdict. "Because of the complexity of this case, I've assigned Dr. Ethan Hayes as the lead neurosurgeon and Dr. Amelia Carter as the lead for cardiovascular management." A sudden pressure gripped Amelia's chest. She didn't need to turn around to know Ethan was sitting across from her. A fraction of a second passed in silence, an almost imperceptible shift in the air, before she forced herself to nod professionally. This was just work, not the past. Amelia straightened. "I will monitor and regulate the patient's heart function throughout the procedure." Ethan's voice followed immediately. "I'll handle the tumor resection. We'll need to synchronize every step. The slightest instability in her vitals could be catastrophic." Their conversation was calm, professional, but Amelia still refused to meet his eyes. No matter their history, Ethan was a brilliant surgeon. She couldn't deny that. But standing in the same operating room as him, working side by side after 10 years of silence, that was an entirely different challenge. "Dr. Spencer will assist me during the procedure," Ethan added. "Olivia." The name forced Amelia to look up, straight at Olivia Spencer, who sat beside Ethan. There was no denying Olivia's reputation. She was an incredibly talented neurosurgeon. She and Ethan had collaborated on numerous successful cases. Their professional synchronization in surgery was unmatched. But Amelia also recognized the way Olivia looked at him. It wasn't just respect for a colleague. It was something more. A tight, unfamiliar ache settled in Amelia's chest, but she pushed it down. Buried it. She had no right to feel anything. She had chosen to walk away. Dr. Simmons nodded. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Prepare thoroughly. This isn't just a critical case for the patient, but a major milestone in medical research. The conversation she didn't want to have. As the meeting ended, the surgeons began filing out. Amelia gathered her notes, keeping her movements controlled, ready to leave as quickly as possible. But just as she turned, a voice stopped her. Amelia! She froze. Ethan stood closer than she expected, his gaze unreadable. We need to work together professionally. His tone was steady, but there was something beneath the words, something she couldn't quite place. Amelia met his eyes without flinching. I have no intention of doing otherwise. Their gazes locked. A few seconds passed. Then, Ethan gave a small nod. Good. See you tomorrow. Without another word, he turned and walked away. Amelia stood there for a moment, her grip tightening around the file in her hands. She had spent years training herself to forget Ethan Hayes. But tomorrow, she would have to stand beside him, trust him, and put her hands in his. Not as a lover from the past, but as a surgeon whose every move could determine life or death. And that might be the hardest thing she had ever done. 6 a.m. Johns Hopkins Medical Center. The hospital buzzed with anticipation. Word of today's high-risk surgery had spread through the halls, drawing the attention of doctors, medical students, and senior staff alike. Everyone knew this was more than just a groundbreaking procedure. This was a battle for a young prodigy's life. Inside operating room 4, the stark white glow of surgical lights gleamed against the sterilized instruments. The air was frigid, sending an involuntary shiver down Amelia's spine. Or maybe it was the weight of what was about to happen. 17-year-old Emily Lawson, a gifted violinist, lay on the operating table, her fragile frame surrounded by an intricate network of monitors and machines. Even under anesthesia, her face looked serene, completely unaware that in a few hours, her entire future would be decided by the hands of the surgeons standing over her. Amelia swallowed, pushing down the sudden tightness in her chest. And then she looked up. Ethan was already across the table, dressed in his dark blue surgical scrubs, his face hidden behind a mask. But his eyes, the same deep brown she once knew so well, were sharply focused behind his protective glasses. Not on her, not on anything else, only on the patient. Good. That was exactly how it should be. Let's begin. Ethan's voice rang out, steady and authoritative. The surgical team moved into action, the final checks for anesthesia and vital monitoring completed. The steady beep, beep, beep of the ECG confirmed that Emily's heartbeat remained stable for now. Amelia took a deep breath. Personal history didn't matter here. The only thing that mattered was keeping Emily alive. Prepare to regulate heart rate, she instructed her team. We need complete stability throughout the procedure. She felt Ethan's gaze flick toward her for a split second before he turned back to his team. We'll begin the craniotomy and approach the tumor, Ethan said, his voice calm. Amelia, if there's any deviation in vitals, alert me immediately. Understood, she replied. And the surgery began. Hour 1, precision in every cut. Ethan made the first incision, slicing through the delicate layers of scalp with precise, practiced movements. The room fell into absolute silence, save for the rhythmic hum of monitors and the occasional murmur of the surgical team. Amelia kept her eyes on the screens, tracking every heartbeat, every fluctuation in blood pressure. She knew that if anything went wrong, even a single irregular rhythm, Emily could go into cardiac arrest in an instant. We've reached the tumor, Ethan announced after nearly 2 hours of meticulous work. Beginning resection, slowly, carefully, he began to separate the tumor from the surrounding brain tissue, his hands steady as he navigated through the delicate neural pathways. Amelia found herself watching him, even when she knew she shouldn't. The way he held his breath before a crucial maneuver. The way his hands never trembled, even when working millimeters away from a fatal mistake. It had been 10 years, but in that moment, he was exactly the same. Vitals remained stable, she reported, shaking off the distraction. Ethan didn't look at her, only giving a small nod of acknowledgement. But she felt it, the unspoken trust they once had. Had it ever really disappeared? Hour 6, a dangerous shift. 6 hours in, more than 60% of the tumor had been removed. We're approaching the vagus nerve, Ethan said, his voice controlled. Amelia, I need absolute cardiac stability for at least 10 minutes. She nodded, making the necessary adjustments to ensure Emily's heart rate remained steady. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. And then suddenly, blood pressure dropping. A nurse's voice pierced through the silence. Amelia's eyes snapped to the monitor. Emily's heart rate was plummeting. She's bradycardic. Amelia's voice sharpened as she quickly adjusted the 4 infusion, administering atropine to stabilize heart rate. Ethan's head snapped up. I haven't touched the nerve yet. Why is this happening? It's an autonomic reflex response, Amelia said quickly, working as fast as she could. We need to maintain oxygenation and restore cardiac output immediately. She increased the medication dosage, but Emily's vitals continued to drop. Not enough. It wasn't enough. For the first time in the entire procedure, Ethan's voice tightened with concern. Amelia, if we can't stabilize her, I can't proceed. She clenched her jaw. Failure wasn't an option. For the first time in hours, she looked up at Ethan and asked the one question that had a deeper meaning than medicine. Do you trust me? Ethan's hands stilled. His eyes met hers. A long pause, and then finally a quiet, resolute nod. I trust you. She didn't let those words affect her. Not now. Amelia swiftly activated the temporary pacemaker, delivering a precisely calculated pulse to stimulate the heart. For a few agonizing seconds, the entire room held its breath. 1 second, 2, and then beep, beep, beep. The monitor's rhythm normalized. Blood pressure stabilizing, a nurse confirmed. Amelia exhaled sharply, feeling the weight lift, just slightly. Ethan relaxed his shoulders. All right, let's finish this. Hour 12. Success and unfinished conversations. By the 12th hour, the last fragments of the tumor had been safely removed. Emily's heart remained steady, her brain function intact. As Ethan set down his scalpel, the tension in the room dissolved into quiet relief. The surgery was a success, he announced. A soft wave of applause rippled through the surgical team. Amelia exhaled, her hands trembling slightly from the sheer mental and physical exhaustion. And then she looked up and found Ethan already looking at her. There was something in his gaze, a mixture of gratitude, respect, and something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. They had just saved a life together. But Amelia couldn't help but wonder, had they also just revived something that had been buried for the past 10 years? A truth that changes everything. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed softly, casting a cold, sterile glow over the hallways of Johns Hopkins Medical Center. The scent of antiseptic lingered in the air, but Amelia barely noticed any of it. Her mind was spinning. Ethan never betrayed you. It was his mother who made sure you walked away. Olivia's words still rang in her ears like a deafening echo, shaking the very foundation of everything she had believed for the past 10 years. She wanted to dismiss it. She wanted to tell Olivia she was wrong. But she couldn't, because deep down something about it made sense. 10 years ago, Amelia had been so sure. She could still remember it vividly. The way her fingers had trembled as she gripped her phone, the way her heartbeat had thundered in her ears when she had answered that call. A gentle but firm voice had spoken from the other end. Amelia, you're a smart girl, but you refuse to see what's right in front of you. Ethan is not meant for you. He has a bright future ahead, and I won't let you be the one to hold him back. Did you know? He's already seeing someone else. A woman I believe is far more suited for him. Amelia had stood frozen in her tiny apartment, her world cracking apart piece by piece. She had called Ethan immediately. No answer. She had texted him. No response. 3 days later, a mutual friend had mentioned that Ethan was in New York for a medical conference. And he wasn't alone. That had been the final straw. The last nail in the coffin of what she had once thought was an unbreakable love. And so, Amelia had walked away. She had buried herself in her work, convincing herself that Ethan had made his choice, that he had chosen someone else. She had spent years telling herself that he was the one who left first. But now Olivia was telling her that everything had been a lie, that the voice on the phone, the one that had shattered her heart, had been none other than Ethan's mother. That Ethan had been fed a different lie altogether, that Amelia had left him because she didn't want to be tied down, that for 10 years, they had both been prisoners of a cruel manipulation neither of them had ever questioned. Present day, Johns Hopkins Medical Center. No, that's not possible. Amelia shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. She had never seen any sign that Ethan's mother disapproved of her. She had never suspected. But then again, had she ever really looked? Olivia's expression softened, but there was an undeniable certainty in her eyes. I know it's hard to hear, but Amelia, I'm telling you the truth. Amelia felt the wall behind her, steadying herself. Everything she had believed for a decade, every wound, every sleepless night, every unanswered question, it had all been built on a lie. A decade wasted. A decade of hating Ethan for something he never did. A decade of Ethan resenting her for something she never chose. Her chest felt tight, her breath uneven. How do you know this? She finally managed to ask, her voice hoarse. Olivia sighed. I've worked with Ethan long enough to know he's not the kind of man who would do that to you. But I only learned the full truth recently. She hesitated, then added, Dr. Richardson told me. Amelia's brow furrowed. Dr. Richardson? The neurologist? Olivia nodded. He was a close family friend of the Hayeses. Apparently, he overheard Ethan's mother talking about it years ago. He kept quiet all this time, but when he saw the two of you working together again, he finally told me. Amelia let out a shaky breath. It all made sense now. Ethan hadn't abandoned her. Ethan hadn't betrayed her. He had thought she left him, just like she had thought he left her. They had both been victims of the same manipulation. 10 years lost. 10 years they could never get back. Her stomach churned with emotions she couldn't untangle. Anger. Regret. A grief so deep it made her physically ache. And worst of all, a question. What now? What was she supposed to do with this information? Tell Ethan? Pretend she didn't know? Confront the past and risk reopening a wound that had never properly healed? She didn't know. All she knew was the truth had been buried for a decade, and now it was finally staring her in the face. The moment that changed everything. Ethan turned as she stepped into the room, his expression a mix of surprise and quiet wariness. Amelia? His voice was calm, but there was a slight edge to it, like he sensed something was wrong. Is everything okay? No, nothing was okay. Amelia swallowed, her heart slamming against her ribs, but she refused to let her emotions take over. Not yet. I need to ask you something. Her voice was steady, but she could hear the tremor beneath it. Ethan frowned slightly, tilting his head. All right. What is it? She took one step closer, her gaze never leaving his. 10 years ago, she started barely above a whisper. Did you ever believe that I left you? That I chose to walk away? For the first time since she walked in, Ethan went still. His fingers curled slightly at his sides, but his face remained unreadable. Then, after a pause that stretched just long enough to feel unbearable, he finally spoke. It wasn't a belief, Amelia. His voice was controlled, measured. It was a fact. A cold weight dropped in her stomach. There was no hesitation in his answer. No room for doubt. Ethan truly believed she had abandoned him. She felt the anger rise in her chest again, but this time, it wasn't just anger at his mother. It was anger at herself, because she had never once questioned it either. She had never asked, never fought. She had let the lie win, and now she had to fix it. She clenched her jaw and took another step forward, until she was close enough to see the flicker of something in his eyes. Something raw, something vulnerable beneath all that control. You were wrong. Ethan's brow furrowed, but she didn't let him speak. I never left you, Ethan. Her voice was firm now, unwavering. I never walked away. I never chose my career over you. That wasn't what happened. Confusion flashed across his face. Amelia, what are you saying? She took a deep breath, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. "I'm saying that it was never my choice to leave." Ethan's body tensed, his eyes searching hers for answers he didn't want to find. Then whose choice was it? Her heart pounded. She knew the next words would change everything. "Your mother." A sharp silence fell between them. Ethan didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even blink. His entire expression froze, like she had just punched the air out of his lungs. She forced herself to keep going, even as she saw the muscles in his jaw tighten, his hands clenching at his sides. "She was the one who called me. She was the one who told me that you had moved on, that you were with someone else." Amelia's voice cracked slightly, but she didn't stop. "She made sure I believed it. And when I tried to reach you, you didn't answer." Ethan's gaze darkened. "I never got a call from you." She let out a bitter breath. "Because she made sure you wouldn't." His breathing had changed now, shallow, controlled, as if he was keeping something dangerous locked inside. But Amelia wasn't finished. And she didn't stop there. Her voice lowered. "She told you that I left because I didn't want to be tied down, didn't she?" Ethan didn't answer, but she already knew, because the way his fingers curled into white-knuckled fists at his sides. That was answer enough. Amelia let out a breath, stepping back. "She wanted us to break. And we let her win." Ethan exhaled sharply, as if he had just been struck. For a long moment, he didn't say a word. Then, very slowly, he turned away from her. His hands found the edge of the table beside him, gripping it so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He was trying to process it, trying to believe it, trying not to explode. Amelia waited for the rage, waited for the disbelief, waited for anything that would tell her what he was thinking. But when he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Too quiet. "You're telling me," he said slowly, each word laced with a fury so cold it sent a shiver down her spine, "that I lost 10 years of my life. 10 years of my life without you because of her?" Amelia swallowed hard. "Yes." Ethan closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. When he opened them again, something was different. Something dangerous. Something broken. "I need to go." Amelia's breath hitched. "Ethan, I need to go." His voice was sharp, final. He took a step back, shaking his head as if trying to physically push the truth away. And then, he walked past her, not toward the hospital exit, but toward the one place she knew he was going. He was going to find her, his mother, and Amelia didn't know if she could stop him, or if she even wanted to. Finally, the biggest misunderstanding between them has been resolved. The truth behind their 10-year separation is now clear. Will Amelia and Ethan choose to put the past behind them and give their love another chance? How do you want this story to end? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The fluorescent light cast a soft glow over Amelia's office, illuminating the letter from Los Angeles General Hospital resting on her desk. The bolded title reminded her that she had a choice. A fresh start far away from New York, far away from everything that had happened here. That had always been the plan. When she accepted the temporary position at Mount Sinai, she had never intended to stay. She had come to complete a few critical surgeries to fulfill her obligations, and then return to her life on the West Coast, where there were no painful memories, no unresolved past, no Ethan Hayes. There had been nothing keeping her here, nothing worth holding on to. But now, everything had changed. She knew the truth now. She knew why she and Ethan had been apart for 10 years. And she knew she couldn't just walk away. Not again. The vibration of her phone snapped her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. Incoming call, LA General Director. Amelia took a deep breath, then picked up. Dr. Carter. The voice on the other end greeted her, warm yet expectant. "We're eager to hear your decision. Have you given our offer some thought?" Amelia's grip on her phone tightened. If she left, she would have a new beginning, free from the ghosts of her past. She would never have to see Ethan again, never have to wonder what could have been. Logically, it was the perfect opportunity. But logic wasn't what guided her this time. Amelia closed her eyes for a brief second, then exhaled. When she spoke, her voice was calm, steady, certain. "I appreciate the opportunity, but I've decided to stay in New York." A brief silence. Then, a polite but disappointed, "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I still have things I need to do here." The director sighed, then offered her a final chance. "We think highly of you, Dr. Carter. If you ever reconsider, our doors will always be open." "Thank you," Amelia said softly. As she hung up, a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying lifted from her shoulders. This wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. She stood from her chair, stepping toward the large office window, gazing down at the city below. New York, the city that had once been her home, the city where she had fallen in love, where she had lost that love, and now, the city where she had a chance to find it again. Just as she turned away from the window, she heard a voice from the hallway. "Dr. Carter." She recognized it instantly. Her breath caught as she turned. Ethan stood at the doorway, a file in hand, but his gaze was locked on her. Not the documents. Not anything else. Just her. "You're looking for me?" Amelia asked, keeping her tone even. Ethan nodded, stepping closer. "I heard about the offer from Los Angeles. Have you decided yet?" Amelia studied his face, the controlled expression, the quiet intensity in his eyes. She took a deep breath, and then, without hesitation, "I have. I'm staying in New York." For the first time in a long time, she saw something flicker across his face. Relief, happiness, maybe even hope. Ethan held her gaze for a long moment before he spoke. "I'm glad." His voice was lower, steadier than before. "Really glad?" Amelia felt a warmth spread in her chest, a quiet, unexpected happiness. She let herself smile, just a little. "Me too." 2 months had passed since Amelia chose to stay in New York. At first, she and Ethan had kept their relationship strictly professional, working side by side in the OR, discussing cases, keeping just enough distance to avoid crossing the invisible line between past and present. But fate had no intention of letting them stay there forever. Conversations stretched longer than necessary. Late-night messages became more frequent. Shared glances lasted a little too long. Inside jokes made their way back into their dynamic, as if no time had passed at all. And then one night, everything changed. That day, Amelia and Ethan performed one of the most difficult surgeries of their careers. A 10-hour-long procedure on a 72-year-old woman with a rare heart condition and a brain tumor that required both specialties to work in absolute synchronization. Every incision, every suture, every decision had to be flawless. For 10 straight hours, they worked as if the past decade of separation had never happened. Like a melody that had been interrupted but, once resumed, flowed seamlessly as if it had never stopped. When it was over, Amelia exhaled, pulling off her surgical gloves. Beside her, Ethan did the same, exhaustion evident in his posture. But his satisfaction was just as clear. "Another success," he murmured, voice hoarse from the long hours. Amelia nodded, suddenly too aware of how close they were standing. The warmth of his presence, the familiarity of it, should have felt normal by now. But tonight it didn't. Tonight it felt different. As they left the OR and stepped into the quiet hospital corridor, Ethan's voice broke the silence. "Do you want to take a walk?" Amelia blinked, slightly surprised. For the past 2 months, they had strictly kept their connection within the walls of the hospital. They never met outside of work, as if both were afraid of what it might mean. But now he was asking, and for some reason, she didn't want to say no. "Okay," she said. They walked out into the crisp New York night, the wet pavement shimmering under golden streetlights. The city was alive with its usual symphony of car horns and distant conversations. Yet between them, there was only silence. A silence that felt comfortable. A silence that felt dangerous. Until finally they stopped, and Amelia realized where they were. A small cafe on the corner of the street. Their cafe. She stared at the sign above the entrance, memories crashing over her like a tidal wave. This was where they had spent countless nights together, debating medical cases, sharing dreams of the future, laughing at the most ridiculous things. This was where Ethan always ordered the strongest black coffee on the menu, and where she never strayed from her mocha with extra whipped cream. This was where they had once been everything to each other, before it had all been taken away. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze also fixed on the cafe. He remembered too, and suddenly, Amelia couldn't hold it in anymore. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked softly. "What our lives would have been like if we hadn't been separated?" Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he turned to her, his answer simple, raw, and honest. "I don't know." His voice was low, steady. "But I do know one thing." He faced her fully now, his expression clear, determined. "I don't want to lose you again." The words sent a shockwave through her heart, because she could see it in his eyes. He wasn't confused. He wasn't hesitant. He wasn't lost in the past. He knew exactly what he wanted, and so did she. Ethan stepped closer, close enough for her to feel his warmth against the cool night air. He raised his hand, slowly, carefully, and brushed his fingers against her cheek. But he didn't rush. He was waiting for her to pull away, waiting for her to say no. She didn't. She closed the distance herself, and when their lips met, the world around them disappeared. This wasn't like the kisses from their past. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It was slow, deep, and filled with everything they had lost. It was a promise that, despite 10 years of pain and 10 years of misunderstandings, what they had wasn't gone. A promise that, this time, they wouldn't let anything, or anyone, tear them apart again. Ethan's arms tightened around her, as if to make sure she was real, as if afraid she would slip away again. But Amelia had no intention of leaving. Not this time. They had spent a decade searching for answers, a decade suffering in silence, a decade trying to forget something that had never truly left them. But now, they had found their way back, and this time, nothing would stand in their way. New York in the fall was breathtaking, a season of change, of warmth hidden beneath the crisp chill in the air. Amelia had always loved this time of year. The burnt oranges and golden yellows of Central Park, the way the leaves rustled underfoot as the wind carried them along the cobblestone paths. But tonight was different, because tonight, Ethan was holding her hand, his fingers wrapped around hers. Not urgently, not possessively, but with a steady certainty that made her heart skip a beat. They walked side by side beneath the soft glow of street lamps, their reflections shimmering on the glassy surface of the lake nearby. "Where are we going?" Amelia asked, curiosity lacing her voice. Ethan only smiled. That smile she had fallen for all those years ago, the one that held secrets and promises all at once. "You'll see." A few minutes later, Amelia recognized where they were headed, and suddenly, her chest tightened. She knew this place. It was where they had their very first date. The memory hit her all at once. The same tree-lined paths, the same quiet little alcove hidden away from the city's rush, the same old wooden benches they had once sat on, talking for hours as if time didn't exist. But there was one thing that wasn't the same. Right in front of her, a small table was set up, lit by the flickering glow of candlelight. A bottle of deep red wine rested beside 2 glasses, waiting for them. Amelia stopped in her tracks, her breath caught in her throat. She turned to Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. "You planned this?" His smile softened. "Sit down." They clinked their glasses together, the wine swirling under the candlelight. "To what we've lost," Ethan said, watching her carefully. Amelia lifted her glass, a small smile forming. "And to what we've found." The warmth of the wine spread through her, but it wasn't just the alcohol, it was him. The way he looked at her like he still saw the girl he had loved 10 years ago. The way their laughter blended effortlessly, just as it once had. They talked about everything, the years they had spent apart, the patients who had changed them, the dreams they had once shared but never had the chance to chase together. And then, somewhere between the past and the present, Amelia found herself asking the question she had been too afraid to voice before. "Do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if we had never been separated?" Ethan set his glass down, his gaze deep, unreadable. Then slowly he said, "I don't know, but I know one thing." He reached for her hand across the table, lacing his fingers through hers. "I don't want to lose you again." Her breath hitched, because this time she knew neither of them would let that happen. The night air grew colder as they finished their meal, but Amelia barely noticed. because suddenly Ethan was standing up. She looked up at him, confused. "Ethan?" And then he reached into his pocket. Her heart stopped. Before she could even process what was happening, Ethan dropped to one knee. The world stilled. A small, velvet box appeared in his hands, and as he flipped it open, the diamond inside caught the glow of the candlelight, refracting tiny stars in every direction. Amelia felt her breath catch, her pulse quicken, her vision blur with unshed tears. And then his voice. "We lost 10 years, Amelia." His voice was calm, steady, filled with nothing but certainty. "I don't want to waste another second." He swallowed, his gaze locked onto hers. "Marry me?" A quiet sob slipped from her lips, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. Not because she had to think about her answer, not because she was unsure, but because she had never been more sure of anything in her entire life. With a trembling breath, she nodded. "Yes." Ethan let out a breath of laughter, a sound of pure joy. He slipped the ring on her finger, his hands warm and steady against her skin. Then, he pulled her into his arms, crushing her against his chest as if he was afraid she would disappear. She held on to him just as tightly. And when he kissed her, it wasn't a kiss of reunion anymore. It wasn't a kiss of making up for lost time. It was a kiss of forever. As they stood beneath the city lights, wrapped in each other's arms, Amelia finally knew what home felt like. It wasn't a place. It wasn't a city. It was Ethan. They had spent 10 years lost in the dark, but they had finally found their way back to each other. And this time, nothing would ever pull them apart again. How wonderful! What and they have all been waiting for has finally arrived. Let's join Amelia and Ethan in their special wedding ceremony and wish them all the best. New York awoke to a morning wrapped in soft mist. The first golden rays of sunlight stretching between the towering skyscrapers, casting a glow over the city that had witnessed their love, their loss, and their reunion. But today, there would be no more distance, no more misunderstandings, no more waiting. Today, Amelia Carter and Ethan Hayes would finally become husband and wife. It surprised no one that they chose New York Presbyterian Hospital as the venue for their wedding. This wasn't just where they worked. It was where they had found their way back to each other. It was where their love, long buried under years of hurt, had been resuscitated, healed, and revived. It was where they saved lives together. And now, it was where they would start their own forever. The hospital's grand hall had been transformed. Rows of chairs, draped in soft white fabric, lined the aisle. On each seat, a small card bore an inscription in elegant gold lettering. True love is never lost. It only takes time to find its way back. At the front, beneath a beautifully adorned floral arch, warm candlelight flickered, casting a soft glow against the white walls. The air was filled with the delicate scent of roses and jasmine, while a string quartet played a gentle, timeless melody. Among the guests sat their colleagues, friends, and family, each of them witnesses to a love story that had defied time, distance, and fate itself. Standing at the altar, Ethan Hayes waited. Dressed in a classic black tuxedo, his hands clasped in front of him, he was the picture of calm. But his eyes were fixed on the entrance, because in mere moments, Amelia would walk toward him. And this time, she would never walk away. The grand doors swung open, and there she was. Amelia Carter stepped forward, bathed in golden morning light, her white gown flowing with ethereal grace. The dress, simple yet breathtaking, hugged her figure before cascading into soft layers of tulle. A delicate veil framed her face, though nothing could hide the pure joy and certainty in her eyes. She had never needed a crown, because tonight, her love was her only adornment. As the first chords of Can't Help Falling in Love played softly, she walked toward the man she had loved since she was young and fearless. The man she had once lost, the man she had found again. Step by step, the world faded. All she saw was Ethan, and all he saw was her. As they stood face to face, the officiant smiled warmly. "We are gathered here today," he began, to witness a love that has stood the test of time, a love that was lost but never truly gone, a love that found its way home. Ethan tightened his hold on Amelia's hands, and when it was time to speak, his voice was steady, deep, and filled with everything he had never stopped feeling. Amelia, I once believed I would never be whole again without you. When we were apart, I spent 10 years carrying the weight of everything we lost. But today, I stand here not just to tell you that I love you, but to promise that from this moment forward, I will never let anything take us away from each other again. Amelia's eyes blurred with emotion, but she held her ground. When she spoke, her voice, though trembling, was filled with unwavering truth. Ethan, I spent 10 years trying to convince myself that love could be forgotten, that what we had was something of the past. But I was wrong, because love, our love, never left. It was always here, waiting for us to find it again. And today, I choose you. I choose you as my husband, my partner, and the father of our future children. I choose you, now and always. A hush fell over the guests. Then soft sniffles. Tears were discreetly wiped away. Even Olivia Spencer, Amelia's maid of honor, had a dab at the corners of her eyes. And standing near the back, Nathan Pierce, the man who had once tried to win Amelia's heart, simply smiled. Because some loves were meant to be. The officiant nodded, voice warm with emotion. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. A collective breath was held. And then, Ethan cupped Amelia's face gently, his thumb grazing her cheek. And as their lips met, a roar of applause erupted. It was not just a kiss. It was a reunion. It was a vow kept. It was a love reclaimed stronger than ever. They had found their way back to each other. And this time, nothing would ever come between them again. As they stepped outside, the autumn sunlight bathed them in a golden glow. White rose petals rained down upon them, carried by the crisp morning breeze. Ethan pulled her close, his lips brushing against her ear. "We've wasted enough time," he murmured, his voice full of love and promise. "From now on, I'm never letting you go." Amelia laughed softly, pressing her cheek against his chest. "And I'll always be right here, beside you. Forever." The past no longer mattered. The future was theirs to create. And this time, they would write it together. The rooftop of New York Presbyterian Hospital had never looked so magical. Golden fairy lights twinkled overhead, casting a soft glow over the city skyline, where the Empire State Building and Chrysler Tower stood tall against the evening sky. The crisp autumn air carried laughter, music, and the clinking of champagne glasses as guests celebrated the love story that had defied time and distance. Amelia and Ethan, finally husband and wife, were at the heart of it all. Surrounded by friends, family, and colleagues, they had never felt more at home. Because tonight, they weren't just celebrating their love. They were celebrating finding their way back to each other. Ethan held out his hand. "Dance with me?" Amelia smiled, slipping her fingers into his. "Always." As the first notes of Moon River floated through the air, Ethan led her onto the dance floor, where they moved in perfect synchrony beneath the soft glow of string lights. It was slow, intimate, a dance between two souls who had waited far too long to be together again. Amelia rested her head against Ethan's chest, listening to the steady, familiar rhythm of his heartbeat. 10 years ago, she had thought this moment was lost forever. But now here they were. "I used to believe I lost you forever," Ethan murmured, his lips brushing against her temple. "But some love stories don't end. They just take longer to find their way back." Amelia closed her eyes, letting his words settle deep into her heart. "We took the long way home," she whispered. "But we made it." And she knew they would never lose each other again. As the music played on, Amelia pulled back slightly, searching Ethan's face with something new in her eyes. Ethan noticed instantly. "What is it?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Amelia bit her lip, her fingers hesitating before resting lightly on her stomach. Ethan's brow furrowed for half a second. Then, realization struck. His breath hitched, his entire world tilted. Amelia, his voice barely made a sound. Are you? She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Unable to say the words before a wide, radiant smile broke across her face. We're having a baby, Ethan? The world stood still. And then, Ethan let out a breathless, disbelieving laugh, his hands gripping her waist like he needed to anchor himself in reality. Oh my God, Amelia! He cupped her face, looking at her like she had just given him the greatest gift of his life. We're going to be parents. His voice cracked with emotion, and Amelia could only nod through her happy tears. We're going to be a family. And in the next second, Ethan swept her into his arms, lifting her off the ground and spinning her around beneath the city lights. Amelia laughed, breathless and full of joy, as the cheers of their guests erupted around them. Olivia gasped, covering her mouth in shock before tearing up with happiness. Nathan, once a man who had wanted Amelia for himself, simply smiled, knowing she was exactly where she was meant to be. And Ethan? Ethan set Amelia down gently, his hands never leaving her as he rested his palm against her stomach, and wonder written all over his face. I love you, Amelia. His voice was raw, full of everything he had never stopped feeling. She covered his hand with hers, smiling through happy tears. And our baby will know just how much. As the party continued around them, Amelia and Ethan swayed together once more, their fingers intertwined. This time, they weren't just dancing as lovers reuniting. They were dancing as partners for life, as husband and wife, and now, as parents-to-be. Ethan pressed a kiss to her forehead, his grip tightening slightly, as if still afraid this was all too good to be true. But it wasn't. This was real. This was forever. And under the golden glow of the city they had always loved, they danced, knowing they would never be apart again. Ethan and Amelia's story was never just about love. It was about truth. It was about forgiveness. It was about second chances. Though they had been torn apart by misunderstandings, time, and forces beyond their control, their love had never truly disappeared. It had simply waited in the quiet spaces between heartbreak and hope. Waited in the moments they thought they had moved on, but never really did. Waited for the right time to return. And when that time came, it was stronger than ever. 10 years apart could have been nothing but a tragedy. But instead, it became a journey of growth. A journey that made them stronger. A journey that made them realize that some loves don't fade with time. They only grow deeper when tested by it. Because when love is real, it doesn't end. It simply finds its way back home. Ethan and Amelia's story is a reminder to all of us that life always gives us another chance to love. That sometimes, what we thought was lost forever comes back to us in ways more beautiful and meaningful than we ever imagined. And that the right love, at the right time, will always find its way back to where it belongs.